FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
Dakota Wood is an analyst joining us from the Heritage Foundation right now. Dakota, how are you?
It's great to be with you. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. What is our current status with ISIS? I thought I read a headline where another town is about to be overtaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, it depends on the region you're talking about and what day of the week. So in some areas, ISIS is trying to reclaim or take new ground. In other areas, it's losing ground either to Iraqi forces or to Russian forces in Syria, depending on where you're talking about. But they have been making pushes. You've seen reports of attacks in Baghdad itself against Shia neighborhoods in particular. And so it's a very fluid battlefield. And folks will tout one particular advancement or setback based on their, the political points they're trying to score.
No, absolutely. So we've got more troops on the ground, albeit not a great number of troops on the ground. Are we doing all we need to be doing against this group right now?
No. I mean, they still control half of Syria and probably a third of Iraq. So if the U.S. national objective is the destruction of the Islamic State, as has been stated numerous times by the administration, then we've got a paltry effort going on. Russia has used 10 times the number of strikes in support of the Assad regime against rebel factions and a little bit against ISIS in Syria compared to what the U.S. has done in that particular country. When it gets to Iraq, reports right around 5,000 people on the ground. Depends on how you define whether they're combat troops or not, but primarily the effort has been to provide advisory assistance to Iraqi units, almost all Sunni, with U.S. Special Operations Forces, and then the support efforts with airstrikes and intel and battle damage assessment. But the administration has refused to put U.S. ground combat formations, brigades or what have you, to really help mop things up. And so what we're seeing as a consequence is a further division between Shia and Sunni within Iraq, within the Iraqi population, and the introduction of Iran and its surrogates and proxy elements that further complicate the stability of the Iraqi government there in that country. So I think we're making matters worse than better.
We're talking to Dakota Wood, who's a senior research fellow in defense programs at the Heritage Foundation. If I can switch gears for a minute, which is only sort of a switching gears, to the National Defense Authorization Act. There's been a lot of talk about the weakened state of our military right now. What is the latest update on this act, which has to be renewed annually, correct?
It does, yeah. That's an annual act passed by Congress, and it provides not only the legal framework, the legislation for what to do with the Department of Defense, how much money to spend on and stuff, but it adds other things. If you want to prevent closure of Guantanamo or force the administration or DOD to provide a report on something. So that's all wrapped up in this very massive legislative bill. Right now, the debates over funding are right around the $610 billion level, which is a lot of money by anybody's estimation, but it's dramatically less than what the U.S. has spent in the past when you account for inflation. So, for example, if we were spending similar amounts to what President Jimmy Carter was spending, the actual defense budget would be around $900 billion. And during the Reagan buildup following the Carter years, the defense budget would be a little over $1 trillion. So we're about two-thirds of what Jimmy Carter was spending on the military today. And I can give you all kinds of examples for the dire state of affairs in the military, but it's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not a pretty picture at all. Dakota Wood with the Heritage Foundation, I appreciate your time. I will direct people to heritage.org so they can educate themselves a little more.
Yes, sir. We got a great index measuring the state of the military, so if you look for military strength at the website, all the information you'd want.